Okay, so I'm not really sure how to go about this, but there's no new One Piece chapter this week, so I figured I'd segue into something a little different. This is going to be a unscripted kind of idea. I'm just kind of just rambling off the top of my head at this point, but what I want to do is tell a story from my time being a dungeon master. So before Big Rona came along and took out my ability to physically go and see the people that I DM for, I was a DM for two different campaigns, both taking place in my homebrew world that I've come up with. So, this story is going to be about my newer party. They had only been playing D&D for about 6 months at this point. I'm the one that introduced all three of them to the concept of the game. We have a cleric, a bard, and a ranger in this party, and they're about level 5. Actually, no, not about. They are level 5. And they come face to face with an Ettin in their travels. Now, for those of you who don't know, an Ettin is a two-headed giant. They are vicious, they're mean, they don't get along with each other very often, and have a tendency to bicker amongst themselves. Now, this party hasn't dealt with huge threats at the time. Usually they only fought things that were about their size. So this was like my first way of trying to see how they would handle something big. Well, it took them a little bit, but the ranger did a history check and figured out what she knew about Ettins. And with that knowledge, she informed the rest of the party that Ettins are not very bright, and they tend to bicker. Well, the cleric in the party, he prepared. He was going through his spells, and he took a look at one of his spells, spiritual weapon, and he turned to me and he asked, "Hey, it says I can make this weapon look like anything, right?" And I said, "Yeah, as long as it's an actual weapon." So he asks me, "What kind of weapons is the Ettin holding?" And I said, "Okay, well, one hand has like a big claymore, and the other hand has a big club." And he said, "Which one's in which hand?" And I said, "Okay, the left one is holding the club, and the right one is holding the sword." And he says, "Okay, can I make my spiritual weapon look like the club, like identical?" And I said, "Yeah, I mean, there's nothing in the rules that say you can't make it look identical to a weapon you've seen, so I allowed it." And he made it appear behind the Ettin. So I did a roll behind the screen to see if the Ettin noticed. They did not. Ettins don't have the best wisdom, so their perception didn't really see it. And I said, "Okay, you made a spiritual weapon. They don't seem to notice. What do you want to do?" He looks at me and he says, "I want to hit the right head with the club." I thought about it for a little bit and I said, "You know what? Go right ahead." I raised the AC a little bit in my head so that, because it was a called shot, he's aiming for a very specific part of the body. And he's trying to make sure that the hit comes from the left side. I'm starting to see where he's going with this plan, and I'm enjoying it. So I take it into account. He manages to hit. So the right head of the Ettin is minding his own business, talking to the bard, when suddenly this club comes and slams him in the left side of his head. And the cleric quickly makes sure that the club, hides. The Ettin turns and he looks at the left head and says, "Hey, why'd you hit me?" And the left head says, "I didn't hit you." And the bard, picking up on this, says like, "It kind of looks like he hit you." And the right head just looks at the left head and says, "Yeah, it kind of felt like this." And he punches the left head because behind the screen, I rolled a intelligence saving throw for the two of them to basically calculate whether or not the other one would actually go about hitting them randomly. Ettins don't have a very high intelligence either. So that didn't go well. So the left one hit the right one hit the left head in retaliation, and the left head says, "Oh, well, if I hit you, did it feel like this?" And he takes his club, and I roll, and he beats his own AC. So the left head smacks the right head in the face with the club. The left head is laughing now. The right head gets ticked off, continues to swing back, and this party of 3, level 5 players, they watch as this Ettin just kills itself, as the two heads literally fight to the death. I am rolling, so I roll for the left head to attack, then I roll for the right head to attack, then I roll intelligence saves to see if either of them can figure out that they've been had. And I made it low. I was like, if they can beat 12, they can figure it out. It doesn't take a child to figure out that you're not hitting, you're not the one that did it. Sadly, neither of them could ever roll higher than, like, I think it was a 7 or an 8, because I think Ettins have like a -4. I'll look it up after this, but anyways, long story short, they defeat the Ettin by just making it fight itself to death. And at this point, I'm laughing, they're laughing, we all had a good time with it. I decided to actually give them bonus XP for coming up with a clever method of defeating the beast. And I think that's something that DMs can enjoy when it comes to forming an encounter. I had it all planned out for just a normal combat scenario, but my players came up with something completely different, and in my opinion, was a much more enjoyable event to watch. So I guess what I'm trying to say with this story is, let your players be clever. Technically in the rules, I could have had it, just roll initiative. They know you attacked with the club, and, we just get into a normal fight. But they took advantage of what little knowledge they had, and they managed to turn what could have been their untimely demise into a fun story to tell, like I'm telling right now. Players can be very clever, but at the same time, they can be very dumb. I may tell this other story that I have in mind if people like this video, but over this, I don't know if you've been watching or just listening, but over the course of this, I have been painting a Ettin miniature, which I will add to my collection. The Ettin is a good choice to give your players for either a roleplay encounter, because it's two heads arguing amongst themselves. The players can either play a voice of reason or a third party to help them finish a dispute, or you can just send it towards their players like a huge battering ram, ready to take them on if your players are more combat focused than they are roleplay focused. The Ettin is a very nice low level encounter for any type of party, and I am happy to say that I really like how this one turned out painting wise. So without further ado, I will add it to my shelf of characters that I have already painted. Perhaps I will tell these stories another day as well. But I think I've let this story run its course, so with that, make sure your paints are always organized, do not drink the forbidden milk, and I will see you in the next video.